You know, I'm convinced that the most discriminated against class of people in the United States today is a group that we would call patriots or conservatives or nationalist as opposed to globalist. Case in point is a patriotic high school student from Palm Bay, Florida. According to Local10.com, this kid had a Trump sign. And because of that, Donald Trump sign, and because of that, he was assaulted. Some black kid just started pounding on him. Here's what the story says. A Central Florida high school student got so mad at a Donald Trump sign that he punched one of his classmates in the face and then repeatedly cursed at and fought with school officials, according to the Palm Bay Police Department. Okay, just to put this in context, let's supposing the victim was not a Trump supporter. Let's imagine he was a Hispanic student. I guess technically it's a Hispanic. To me, it sounds better to say un-Hispanic. So anyhow, un-Hispanic person. That would be considered a hate crime. On the other hand, if the victim had been, say, a homosexual, this guy said, "I hate homosexuals," started pounding on the guy, that would be a hate crime. But because the victim was a patriot, apparently it's okay to pound on him. Well, in this case, maybe not, because the attacker or the alleged attacker was arrested. The story goes on and it says that incident began Wednesday afternoon when Andre Hudson, a 17-year-old Bayside High School student, got into an argument with a classmate. Okay, we got to stop there. One thing I have learned is when the media says they got into an argument, typically that means somebody attacked somebody. It doesn't mean they were standing there debating an issue. They use argument kind of as a generic term that means this guy got attacked. But in this case, we don't really know. So the classmate was holding a Trump sign during gym class. I have no idea why somebody would hold a Trump sign during gym class, but I wasn't there, so maybe he had good reason. Tensions escalated and Hudson punched his peer in the side of the face. Oh, the joys of integration. Hudson was taken to the dean's office. By the way, you know, while this thought comes to mind, have you ever heard of a scenario where a white kid punched a black kid in the face? No, I'm not talking about a Hollywood movie. I know it happens all the time in Hollywood. But I'm talking about in real life, not the fake life that is presented by Hollywood. When a school resource officer arrived, he was visibly agitated and swearing at school officials, according to an affidavit. This is why I call cultural Marxism a virus, a mental virus that infects the brain. If this guy were on some kind of a narcotic that would make him behave like this, we could understand, because that drug affects the brain. But this is not a chemical that is making this kid act crazy. It is a thought process that somebody has inserted into his mind, and the only way people can get into your head is either visually or audibly. He's heard and said stuff that has affected his thinking, so it's like a virus. The officer tried to de-escalate the situation, but Hudson struck his middle finger in the officer's face. My guess is what he did is held up his hand. I don't think he literally stuck him in the face. Paced around the room and began punching filing cabinets and knocking things off the desk. Again, it's like he's on a drug. Like he's on some kind of a mind-altering psychedelic trip. Do they still say psychedelic? I'm stuck in the 60s, I think. When I see that white boy again... Okay, let's start this sentence over. This is the alleged attacker. When I see that white boy again, I'm going to punch him in the face, Hudson said, according to the report. Sounds to me like this is a hate crime. I don't like hate crimes because I think all crimes are hate crimes, but using the government's definition, I think this is probably a hate crime. So a white boy that is carrying a Trump sign is susceptible to violent assault. What kind of country do we live in? The story goes on and says Hudson stormed off, and when he returned to the office, the officer followed him, which makes me wonder, why did he storm off? Why wasn't he taken into custody at that point in time? Why was he treated with privileged status, as if he's a spotted owl or something? You can't touch him. Isn't it kind of obvious there's a problem here? But he's black, so he's privileged, so he can get away with it. Okay, it says the officer followed him. He saw the student with whom he had fought earlier and confronted him again, authorities said. Okay, so it appears to be he punched the kid once and they didn't take him into custody. The teen cursed at his classmate while standing in a menacing fashion and staring, police said. Again, sounds like he's on some kind of a mind-bending drug called cultural Marxism. The other student sat silently during the encounter. A school official tried to stop Hudson, but he shoved her and refused to listen when she told him to get out of the office, according to the report. Hudson tensed up and resisted as the school resource officer grabbed him by the wrist and to try to restrain him. Ultimately, the officer had to grab Hudson in a bear hug to get him to the ground to handcuff him. You know, I'm just trying to get a mental picture of this. This kid walks up to a white boy and punches him. You can't say black boy because that's racism, but you can say white boy because they're boys. 15, 16, 17 years old, that's what they are. So he punches this white boy. He goes on a temper tantrum as if he's on some kind of a mind-bending narcotic. He punches filing cabinets, screams and yells, puts his finger in the officer's face, and they don't restrain him. They just let him go. Then finally, they get the guy down. Hudson was taken to juvenile center being charged with battery and felony battery on a school official. You see what's going on here is our government schools have a policy where you cannot discipline black students. That is to say, disproportionately to how you discipline white students. The fact that black students misbehave more frequently than white students cannot be taken into consideration. So they just have to let them go crazy until they have no choice to restrain them. Absolutely, positively bizarre behavior. So anyhow, the point of all that is this. The most discriminated against people in this country right now are conservatives. They talk about hate groups and victims of hate crimes, and they try to convince us that homosexuals and blacks and Hispanics and Muslims are all victims of white racism and white intolerance and white hate. They're just flat out lying to us. Folks, look, we just saw it. If the victim had been a Muslim or a homosexual or un-Hispanic or a black guy, this would be the quintessential example of racism or what they call homophobia. But because it's black on white, never mind. It's just, a couple kids had a dispute. That's the world we live in. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it on social media. There's a button underneath the video to click on. The button says share, so it's easy to find. Lower right-hand corner of this video is another button that says subscribe. Join the thousands of people who have already subscribed to this channel, and you can be a part of what we're doing by keeping up with these updates that, quite frankly, you can't find this stuff anywhere else. Or I should say it's very difficult to do it. The reason being, most conservative and libertarian websites are terrified because they're intimidated to talk about black on white crime. They're just terrified of being labeled, or I should say mislabeled, racist. We do it anyhow. I mean, they do label us. It's a false label. It's, in my thinking, it's slander, but they still do it. But we're going to keep telling the truth. And because we tell the truth, no doubt the liberals are going to call us a fake hate site. The point of all that is that's why you need to subscribe, because you need to have a source where you can get this information. So give us a thumbs up, and also would like to hear your comments in the comment section below.
Click the red button to subscribe.